We are rolling. Let's go ahead and do this.
Let's do it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Shiftless. I have lost track. I have no idea what episode this is. It is 100 and something somewhere along the way. And yes, we are back, I think, maybe, hopefully. We do have another lost episode out there that it just, y'all didn't want to listen to that one. So we took that offline. Things have been busy, but happy to be back at it now at Casa Verde.
Post-storm.
Post-storm. Weather is always a factor.
It was pretty gnarly last night. We got, according to my weather app, we got 1.6 inches probably in about 45 minutes.
Wow.
At the most.
About what time was that?
9-ish.
Okay. No, we definitely did not get that storm.
Yeah.
Because I was still awake at 9, but I was definitely asleep by the time you sent that text last night.
Oh, yeah, that was early hours.
Yeah, I heard thunder and lightning off in the distance, but...
Oh, it was freaking gnarly here. Just obviously dumping rain, but the wind was blowing like crazy. You see all the limb tips down and everything.
Yeah, I actually parked at that end of the driveway because it looked like that tree might be iffy, but I guess it's just weighted down from wet.
Oh. Hawk.
Yep.
So that's a red-shouldered hawk.
Red-shouldered hawk, and there are 2 juveniles in the nest.
Yes. Yes.
And our mama and dad still around doing things. So it's not just one or the other. They're both there doing their thing.
It's been super cool.
Any idea when they might be leaving the nest?
I don't know. Yesterday, I think. One of them appears to be bigger than the other, but I haven't seen them like side by side. Right. And obviously I haven't gotten that close. But one of them was on the edge of the nest, spreading its wings a little bit. Not feathery.
Are they still that light gray fuzz thing going?
Excuse me. God, my allergies. It's been so cool.
Yeah, allergies are a thing this year. It's
between all the rain and everything being so green.
I mean, we definitely had the spring wildflower allergies, which that's hit and miss. The cottonwood kicked in, but this week we got 2 new factors that are kicking my ass. This is like the bumper crop of milkweed I've seen in years, and it's doing the dandelion thing right now.
Yeah.
And we have the Saharan dust blowing in again.
I love me some good Saharan dust.
Yeah, the Saharan dust. That's the one that gets right down in the bottom of my lungs. But anyway, beautiful temperatures this morning.
Yeah, it's gorgeous today. It's a little humid, but I'm not even going to mention it again.
Hey, it's good bike riding weather.
Yeah, we did TMBG last night because North Shore was still closed. And then after the rain we got, I'm not sure if they got anywhere at Lake Grapevine, but I would assume they did. But we did our hot lap at 4:30, and it was indeed a hot lap on all accounts. And by the time, it was miserable.
It was broiling yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, we finished the first hot lap at 5:25 or something, and it was like you could barely breathe. But it was crazy because we sat around for 15 minutes waiting for everybody to get ready, and by the time we headed to Denton, it was, I mean, I think the temperature had dropped like 15.
The front had rolled in, or at least the pre-front.
Yeah, cloud cover came in and all that, and the temperature just dropped, but the wind was crazy yesterday. I think it was sustained 19, 20 miles an hour and gust up to 30. And so when we did our hot lap, the wind was coming out of the south, so our hot lap goes south first. So it was just, I felt like I was given everything to go 11, 12 miles an hour.
So you got a proper warm-up, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And then we had the wind to our back on Gravel Bomb, and Caleb just was absolutely drilling. And so I got on his wheel, and it was everything I could do to hold his wheel almost. And we crested that last rise on hilltop, and I looked down, my heart rate was 180 riding his wheel, and it was still only my third best performance on hilltop, or on
gravel bomb?
Yeah.
What?
But it was a 24.1 average or something.
Okay. What bike were you on yesterday?
Fargo. Yeah. So not the fastest bike for it, but
understood.
We were.
So what do you recall what your fastest is on gravel bomb?
I think it's like 25.8 or something.
Okay.
But the leaderboard, like Andy Hauser still has it, and I don't think he's lived here for 2 or 3 years. And his is like 34.4.
I'm pretty sure it was set on one of those like 70-mile-an-hour wind days.
Yes, and probably on a road bike, and probably when the road was super groomed.
I've never been on gravel bomb when it's super groomed, so it does happen.
Oh, it happens. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes you go out there and you're like, man, this is like just hard packed.
I've never been there when it was like that.
It hasn't been that way recently, and then Hocamp has second place, and he's not far behind Andy Hauser. And
I know Ben did it on a very high wind day.
Oh yeah.
So it's built for it. It's built for it. So
it points the right direction.
Yep. What about north to south? Are you up to speed on what those KOMs may or may not be?
I really don't know. I hardly ever travel gravel bomb that direction.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think Dromgoole used to have it, but I could be wrong.
It's possible. I also saw Dromgoole double flat on that road one day when he was trying to ride a road bike on there. That was the day we went out riding, and I think he had 5 flats and, I don't know, 10 miles or something.
I've seen Dromgoole with lots of flats for whatever reasons. For whatever reasons. It's all good. It's all good.
I think when it rains, it pours, because I've seen other people plagued with flats on rides before. And I've been through it myself.
As have I.
Speaking of flats, did you watch any of the Unbound coverage?
Yes, I did. Some of the live coverage.
I saw something that's interesting to say the least, but then I read a bunch of comments that made me think about it in a different light. But Keegan Swinson, who finished 7th, and I'm still not sure what happened there.
He crashed at one point.
Oh, he did crash. Okay. But he had a valve stem.
I did see that.
On either side of his wheel.
Yeah.
And it was only internet speculation, but that he had a TPU tube pre-installed. So if he sliced a sidewall or something like that, and he could just inflate his tube. Seems brilliant.
I don't think that's the worst idea I've ever heard. I think we talk about things that might become a thing. That could become a thing.
Not from a recreational standpoint. Definitely.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, think about it.
I think that sealant over time would eat up a TPU tube. I could be wrong. But for where we ride, like, it makes sense where they were, because the thing that's going to slice your tire there is shale or rock, sharp rock. But if you were to get, and this is what made me think about this differently, because people were like, you need to clear thorns out of your tire before you inflate a tube. I was like, yeah, that makes sense, but there shouldn't be any thorn hazard in Emporia, Kansas.
That brings up a good, if you're running tubeless, you're going to have a gazillion thorn tips embedded in the tire.
Around here, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a safe assumption that was a brand new tire installed for the pre-ride in that race. And so they're
maybe not even the pre-ride.
Yeah. Yeah, he might have changed tires. He might have gone, I don't like this tire. But it's safe to say that it was a brand new tire.
Sure.
And so there's not
15, he might have a tire sponsor.
Yeah. But there's not 15 thorn tips in there.
I agree. And that's why we talk through these things. Because my first impression was, that's not a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But okay. So if you are running tubeless, you can't count on that being a backup, because you are going to have goat heads and thorn tips hanging out in your tires.
Yeah.
They're plugging half the holes already.
Yeah. And if you try to plug your tire or something, I don't know how that tube is sitting in there. It's a possibility you could poke your tube.
Possible. And that's what I'm saying. I could see, let's just say envy.
Yeah.
I could see envy wheels selling a double hole, pre-drilled double hole rim, and maybe it's a deep rim. And here's our recommended tube. We don't make any guarantees, but if you want to try this, here's the way you go with it.
Yeah.
And sell a special sealant, sell a special tube. And so it's a special rim. And they're bada bing, bada boom. They've got 100% more profit margin built into the system.
I'm just completely talking out of my butt on this one, but my first thought was, at the very least, the rim's more balanced because you have a valve stem on both sides now. But then I started thinking, do rim manufacturers...
Are they balanced to begin with?
That's what I was wondering. Are they balanced to offset the weight of the valve stem on the other side?
Because realistically, if you have a heavier one, then you've got a perpetual motion machine going. You don't have to pedal as much.
Maybe.
Isn't that the way it works?
I don't know. But it sparked a lot of thought because I was like, went back and forth. Yeah. I was like, right. Smart, not smart, smart.
I'll put a bet out on this one. It won't be $100 bet, but I'll put a $20 bet. I'll put a beer bet out there, a beer. We will probably see within a year about as many double valve stem setups out in the real world as we do Dylan Johnson's 2.2 mountain bike tires on gravel bikes.
I don't know. That seems in the racing world, maybe.
That's the real world.
Yeah. Not that it puts any less validity on the effort, but did Keegan even utilize his...
I don't think it matters. I think enough people saw that they're going to latch onto it.
It's super intriguing. But that makes me wonder if the Odyssey insert that is the 2-layer, the one that I showed you that has a dual valve stem.
Okay.
Like you can turn the valve stem so it's either inflating the insert or it's inflating the tire.
Okay.
And the premise there is you have an adjustable liner. But I'm wondering if that unit, you couldn't just overinflate the liner if your tire ceases holding air. I wonder if that's where the thought process stemmed from.
Maybe. And maybe that was actually the setup he had, or a modified version of that for a specific application or something like that. So
it was interesting nonetheless, but I did not get to watch any of the coverage. I was knee deep, dinner prep and dinner execution and everything. And then I've been crazy since then. I drove to Shreveport and back on Monday to drop my mother off after her 2-week stay here. So it's just been a whirlwind.
I liked the coverage. So we had our Sanger pop-up ride Saturday. Got back to Sanger, I don't know what I do, 4 hours-ish.
Yeah.
So probably back there by noon or noon 30. Probably closer to 11:30, actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, first thing I did was I fired up YouTube for the live coverage, and I just wanted to see where Lauren was in the mix. That was my main thing. And at that point, she was in the lead 3-person breakaway for the women's.
Yeah.
And fairly deep in. They were well over 100 miles in. They had something like a 15-minute gap on the field at that point. And basically what I did, I drove home with YouTube audio in the background, listening to it like I was listening to a game on the radio.
Yeah.
That was actually pretty cool.
Was it easy to follow along with? Because a lot of times when you're listening...
They could have used a little practice on painting verbal pictures.
That's what I was saying. That's not their intent, though. They're intending for you to watch it and listen. So,
I understand that's their intent, but the reality is a huge percentage of the people that are watching YouTube, it's running in the background, and they're listening to YouTube.
That's fair.
And so anybody out there that's a YouTube creator, particularly if you're doing long-form content, the audio is more important than the video, and you need to tell your picture stories to describe what's going on for people that are listening or that they're looking at something else while that's going on in the background sort of thing.
I feel like YouTube, though, has a lot of content creators have, I want to say taglines, but that's not right. Like they make statements that compel you to stay engaged with the screen. Cues, did you see this or look at this? Or
If it's a YouTube short, if it's a 1 minute video or less,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And that first minute, they're doing everything they can to keep you from going somewhere else in all the videos, whether it's a short or a long. But after that first minute, they've pretty much have you hooked at that point. They know you're staying on board, even though you're not completely focusing on it.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying in this case, and it's just, they do it on TV as well for sports. If you're watching baseball, if you're watching football, you're watching what's going on, but they're still telling you diving catch in left center field.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
But
we've gotten away from the days of old where baseball broadcasts were on the radio and you could listen to a baseball game and get the visual picture almost. Because I think people were more skilled in painting that picture verbally back then.
it was a requirement then. Yeah, you can still lean on the visual, and you can lean on I know there's going to be a video replay of this if you're in the booth. And that's what a lot of television broadcasts are doing. They're doing background description, knowing that a lot of people are zoning out or looking at their computer or doing something else. Oh, I just heard something interesting. Now I'm going to look up and watch the replay. There's a lot of that goes on. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not criticizing the folks that did the Unbound coverage. That was a new game for them, and they did a pretty good job.
I heard it was really impressive.
But it was obvious they were leaning on the video graphics to tell a lot of theirs. Like, they didn't do a lot of talking about placement and who's where in the field and stuff like that. Or if there was a group of 3 or 4 riders and they were talking about it, they didn't say who the riders were.
Yeah.
They were leaning on the audience, looking at the picture and knowing. But even then, and when I got home, I turned it on and started watching it. Even when you're watching it, with the video quality and how much dust there was, you can't necessarily see what's going on. So they're talking about what's going on, but you can't see it. So who's doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, somebody just slid out. Okay, who slid out? That sort of thing. Keegan's wreck and things like that. There wasn't a lot of specificity on what caused it to happen and with who and that sort of thing.
Did you see his wreck?
I didn't. That was one of the things that was going on when I was driving.
Okay.
Did you?
No.
Okay.
All I saw was thumbnails.
Understood.
Of videos that I did not watch.
Understood.
It's possible that I could have seen less coverage, but I basically saw zero coverage.
No, I get it. And I had every intent of, when I had spare time, sitting down and watching a replay of the coverage.
Yeah.
And I just haven't gotten around to it.
I'll probably turn it on while I'm prepping today.
Yeah. And that would be a good way to do it. As background, it works really well.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it could be a little better, not as a criticism, here's how you grow that somewhere down the road for future events.
I would guarantee almost that they weren't even thinking of that.
I would say the hosts probably were not. I would guarantee the techno people that were involved in putting the production together knew that's what should be going on. And they didn't think to talk to the host that way and say, you need to talk about things in this light. It's not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. It's just something that could be a little bit better. And we should do more of that when we're podcasting as well. We lean on looking at the computer screen and talking about things, and you have to paint that picture of what it really looks like. And it's a skill.
Yeah.
It's an acquired skill. There's no doubt about that.
I have very few skills. I don't know if...
You've got a few that matter. That's the important thing.
Looks are not a skill, though.
Interpretation of looks might be.
My grandfather notoriously used to say, I wish I would have been born rich instead of so damn good looking.
There you go.
Did you see the video I sent you, the Instagram video?
I did.
Was that so cringy?
There's so much about that. There's so many places I can go with that. Whoa.
Oh, careful. That was Kevin.
That was me.
Kevin. Score 1 for Kevin.
All right, so let's practice what we preach.
Yeah. Well, can we link that video in the
We
podcast?
will.
Okay.
We will, but 99.8% of the people won't click on the link.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
we need to practice what we preach. Do you want to have an attempt at it, or do you want me to have a stab at it?
It almost seemed staged, but I know it wasn't. But it seemed awfully convenient. This guy's just filming. I don't even know where they were.
I did want to dig into it and get more context. I'm going to say Philadelphia is where they were.
Yeah, it was
Philadelphia or New Jersey.
It was definitely a metropolitan area that was downtown amongst high rises.
And
whatever.
Yankeefied.
Yeah, and Yankeefied. Yingling was definitely the beer of choice in that area. But there was a guy that was videoing on a bike riding through the downtown area. And
It
was
might have been Pittsburgh. That might have been my, what did he call it? Urban Gravel Explorer. Anyway, go ahead.
But I don't even know why it showed up on my feed. But it was timely.
Because the AI knows everything. We talked about that in our very first podcast.
Yeah.
I told you then the AI had already taken over.
Oh, yeah.
I get more convinced of it every day. But anyway, go on.
So he's riding and talking to the camera's forward facing. He's not facing the camera, but he's having a dialogue. And
He's narrating over his ride.
And then all of a sudden, this car comes by with a bike.
Sparks flying.
Yeah, bike hanging on by a thread, just laid out flat. And this car is pulling this bike, dragging it.
Going left to right across his screen.
Yeah, and he immediately goes in pursuit mode, and with the hopes of this car catching a red light, which it does.
But like, what, 3 blocks down the
Yeah.
road?
Yeah. And he pulls up, knocks on the door, and says, "Hey, man, you're dragging your Cervelo," and he immediately knows exactly what bike it is and everything. And the guy's, "Oh, shit." He gets out, and I don't know how that happened, but it was probably operator error if I had to guess. But where it got shitty to me is like where he started like almost getting a kick out of it. You guys aren't riding today.
Yeah, that
I didn't enjoy that.
I actually, when he started getting snooty like that,
Yeah.
I exited the video, to be honest with you. Don't get me, okay, so.
I didn't watch like the last 5 seconds because I was like, okay, that's enough of that.
While he's chasing them down, he's being a good Samaritan. There's a little smirk in his voice, and so what? I don't know what the exact. Fair to say it was a $70,000 or $80,000 car.
Yeah, I don't even know what car it was.
It was like a Lexus or an Audi or something like it. Black doctor dentist car.
Yeah.
And $10,000 doctor dentist bike.
Yeah, it was Cervelo S5, which I don't know.
S5
Cervelos.
Pro or something.
Yeah.
This guy was he knew exactly what bike this was. And so here's where it got me a lot bent, actually. And I'm being that way talking about doctor bikes and doctor cars. And yeah, I get it. The Fred jokes and things like that. I get all that. And these guys I guarantee you they were wearing $2,000 worth of kits and shoes each.
Yeah.
These are the guys the bike shops love.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you they love riding bikes too.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. And this guy starts being bike snob to these guys on the bikes that he's implying that they're not worthy of being bike riders, for lack of a better term. But he's enough of a bike snob to know exactly what model bike that was.
It was pretty silly, I thought.
So that was, it was interesting. But here was my big takeaway from it. And we touched on it. I assume we're in our segue to what today's topic will be. This is the perfect segue for it. But going back to $70,000 car, $10,000 bike, $2,000 worth of kit and shoes, $200 rack.
It was I don't know what kind of rack it was. It was not a One Up. It was not a Kuat.
It was
a tray style rack.
It was a tray style rack, but I think it was one of those Rocky mounts that I was talking about.
Oh, you might be right. I need to watch it again. I watched it one time, and I couldn't send it to you fast enough because it was so pertinent per our conversation.
It lined up exactly. Now, I'll explain our conversation. If you want to go on to the Amazons and look up Rocky Mount racks.
Oh, I will.
Just see what the price point is for those these days.
I don't know that I'm familiar with.
And I'm saying Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount has this style of rack, but if you go to Amazon, there's like a gazillion similar Chinese knockoff Temu AliExpress types that are out there that they have that same look and structure to them. I think Rocky Mount is probably the top of the heap for those types, so I don't want to.
It's $769 for a Rocky Mount.
Let me see.
Backstage 2-inch receiver.
Yeah, that's not the one. That's not the one.
But the only reason I'm familiar with Rocky Mounts is when you still had to take your front wheel off to mount your bike. Right. People would buy those mounts and mount them on a board and put them in the bed of their truck or on the bed rail of their truck or whatever.
All right, so we're going to assume this episode is not sponsored by Rocky Mount, and if I'm misspeaking, I apologize.
It's Rocky Mounts with
Let
an
me
S.
see. I'm just trying to see if I...
Damn, they have a rack.
Here, okay, here's the one I'm thinking of. Actually, it's the Swagman XTC2 bike rack. That's the style I'm thinking of, and I apologize. I think Rocky Mount may have used to have a similar style one. Maybe they don't, and if so, I apologize, Rocky Mount. This is specifically...
Here's what he had right there.
Is that exactly...
No, I don't know.
No, because he had... You see how it's got those hoops?
Oh, yeah,
He had those metal hoops for the wheel holders like that. And this is on eTrailer.com for $189.34. So a $200 rack.
Yeah.
I don't know that's exactly the one that he had, but these types of racks are regularly brought up as, that's all you need.
Yeah.
And again, I get it. Not everybody is made of money. I am one of those. I'm not made of money. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, Bradford.
I am not made of money either.
But if I'm rolling a $10,000 bike, I'm not putting it on a $200 rack.
No.
And
I have seen far too many incidents of poor racks failing, and I've seen even more people on the internets crying about their rack failures and losing bikes on 635 or losing bikes on 35. And that's the thing about around here. It's not just if your bike falls off the rack, it's going to get damaged from hitting the ground. Someone's going to run over it. There is far too much traffic.
You could kill somebody.
Oh, yeah, that's that too.
You could kill somebody. Most likely your bike's dead.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah.
All right. For anybody that thinks I'm being snobby here, I am not. I've made all of these mistakes, so you don't have to.
And more.
And more.
Yeah. But it's protect your investment.
Yes.
But that being said, like we discussed the other day, I've had 3 bike rack failures that I can think of off the top of my head. The fourth one is not really a bike rack failure, but it's antiquated technology and blah, blah, blah. But I would say 2, maybe all 3 of those were could be attributed to operator error. And I contend that a lot of bike rack failures are more on the side of the operator than the manufacturer, unless you're talking about just cheap racks that don't do what they're supposed to do and hold your bike securely. So,
well, and that's relative too. It may seem like it's holding it securely at the moment and when you first load up and go, but particularly if you're driving.
Oh shit. I think it's just the wind blowing.
That's fine.
Blowing drops.
I'm good here. Particularly if you're driving hours away, particularly if you're going to a gravel event and driving down gravel roads.
Yeah.
What you think is a secure mount can become fairly insecure.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it until it's too late. And I'm talking about on the lesser expensive ones to begin with. They're just the quality control and the quality of the hardware, the quality of the bindings.
Yeah.
Things like that are just going to be lower. And again, I'm not saying this as a snob. I've learned this the hard way. I went every direction I possibly could on bike racks before I started making the appropriate investments in them. And even then, there's still been issues.
Yeah. I think it's a natural progression, though, for, let's say, just say it's an avid cyclist. Your bike increases in value over time, meaning you get into it and you progressively get more expensive or nicer bikes, and the bike rack is more of a neglected item. And
Yeah, because you blew all your wad on your new bike.
And we all aspire to have a nicer rack, but it doesn't.
I like nice racks.
It doesn't make you look good on the trail, so it gets neglected.
Nice racks make you look good on the trail in the right situation.
But that being said, like, I've always had decent racks, but the other thing is racks wear out. Like, I had a Yakima rack that just wore slap out. Like the, whatever you call it, the post click deal that secures the front wheel into the, just would get to the point,
ratchet.
Yeah, would not hold all the time. And so I ended up like tying it to the wheel with a pedal strap or a toe strap or a voila strap or whatever. And then I'm like, nah, it's time to get a better rack.
And that's what I think I'm up against now is, but it's a combination. It's a combination of worn out rack and user error involved with wearing out the rack. I'm not going to say ahead of schedule because, man, I've been abusing that rack for years. But I've taken that abuse to the next level over the past year.
With the e-bike.
With the e-bike.
Yeah.
And I thought I was okay. And
we all know you're not.
That's the understatement of the year. So I am very loyal to Kuat racks, and I still remain loyal to Kuat racks, but I am having one that's failing on me presently, but it's my own fault. I'm convinced of that.
I think they all have, obviously all have limitations. And I mean, all three of my failures that I can think of offhand were all one-up racks, but that is because that's everything I'm exposed to. And then your is a Kuat, but once again, like, I couldn't attribute any of the three failures I have to manufacturing. The first failure was just age and antiquated because it was such a small hitch receiver piece, and we literally overloaded it, and it was probably 6 years old, and it just physically broke.
Right.
So I think it was time for that rack to be replaced well before that happened.
What do you think the lifespan is? I realize it's a sliding scale depending on how much use and abuse and everything, but
it's funny you say that, because when you said your rack is failing not sooner, but in a rapid fashion, I was actually like having a little internal chuckle, because you do travel to ride your bike a lot. So your bike is on and off the rack, on and off the rack.
And the rack's always on the vehicle.
Yeah.
Always.
And I was sitting here chuckling, thinking, I ride from my house so much that my rack it's got a half-life. It gets half the use of a lot of other racks. So I was just thinking of the contrast there. So it's interesting you say that. I don't know, my One Up has been used and abused, and it's got to be 7 or 8 years old at this point. And it's one of the ones that I said was a user error fail. Oh, I lied. The third failure that I said was operator error. I'm not sure what kind of rack that was, because it wasn't my rack, but my bike was on it. But the other failure for the One Up that I was talking about was we were scouting Wood Ape Ramble, and we're going down, like you said, rough roads, gravel roads, and those One Ups have that cam mechanism that can work loose over time, and you're supposed to check them periodically, which
it's a cam mechanism for the tray to flip up and down? Or
no. For it to lock into the receiver.
Okay.
So it's got a proprietary bolt that you have to have an Allen wrench with a hole in the middle of it to tighten the bolt, and it puts pressure on one corner, effectively putting pressure on all corners, but through a ball bearing that shoves wedges in there. And over time that can come loose, and we're doing like 7 or 8 miles an hour, and I see the bike rack just boom, the whole thing just falls off the truck. Luckily, I was doing, like I said, 7 or 8 miles an hour, and it just scratched up the bottom of the rack because it's aluminum. Got out, took the bikes off, put the bike rack back in, secured it, put the bike racks back on, drove all the way back to Texas, no problems. But it had just worked itself loose, and it was totally my fault. And because it's all CNC'd aluminum and squared off, and I just took a file and cleaned up the rough edges where it was scarred up because it was sharp. And other than the cosmetic, it still functions perfect. And the other failure I had was almost similar thing. When we were doing the big loop, Shannon and I came and got to Big Cedar, and we decided we're done. And I called my buddy Ron Williams. He drove from Lantana, right down the street here, all the way to Big Cedar with his bike rack on the back of his truck, put our bikes on the back of the truck. We drove all the way back from Big Cedar. We were on my street, literally. We were right off of my street. And I'm sitting in the back seat, and Ryan's looking in the rearview mirror, and this is nighttime. And he goes, the bikes are gone. And I'm thinking they're still in, like, way behind us.
South
He
Dallas.
just noticed. But no, the whole bike rack had just fallen off the back of his truck. Luckily, the car behind us had the wherewithal to not only stop and not hit the bikes, but to block the way for us, put on his hazards, and allow us we backed up a little bit and grabbed the whole bike rack and just threw it in the bed of his truck. And Shannon rode holding the bike rack just to make sure it wouldn't slide out again. And that was 100%, I'm convinced, operator error. He just didn't this one had a pin style that went through the whole thing. And he either did not lock it, did not secure it, or possibly didn't even put the whole pin in there. Because he was not expecting our phone call. And he was just like,
he was in a rush.
Yeah, he was like, I got you. And I can see him just throwing the bike rack on, and
get distracted by something and forget it. Yeah.
So those were, I think all three of those could be attributed to operator error. The first one that I talked about with the breakage, I think that's fatigue over time and overloading. And like I said, it should have been replaced well before that. When you're running a reducer, maybe 2 reducers to get down to an inch I think it was 1.25 inches, or 1.5 inches.
It's 1.25 inches and 2 inch.
It was one of the first iterations of One Up racks.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, and it failed just like it should have.
Right.
It wasn't unexpectable.
Yeah.
So
my operator error on this one is that when I went to e-bike, I thought I verified the weight rating on this rack that I have from Kuat. And I did verify it on the rack. It was an 80-pound rating. After the bike fell off the rack but didn't fall to the ground, it got caught on the hitch, thankfully, going up the interstate last week. I dug a little deeper, and the tray rating is 40 pounds. And this e-bike is well above 40 pounds. And this is a year of abuse on this rack with that extra weight on. And that's why I am calling it user error, in that I overloaded the rack. And that is definitely something for people to be cognizant of. And I wasn't really too worried about it in a single bike situation. I was, 80 pounds. I know I'm not at 80 pounds, but the tray weight matters as well. But I know from personal experience, there are plenty of people that are overloading racks, not with e-bikes. That setup y'all rolled into Spinistry Palooza with on Garrett's that took out his rear window.
Get it.
Was that a one-up with the extenders? Or I can't even remember what it was, but I guarantee y'all were overloaded in that setup.
But we had no bags.
Oh, I thought it did have all the bags.
No, we purposely took all our bags off. The real problem there is that rack had a lot of flex on it. And when we went over that railroad track there in Alpine, I think.
Probably.
There's a steep railroad track there. And we went over that, and Garrett had his bike closest to the truck because we went to his house, and that's standard. Put your bike closest to your vehicle. But he has wide bars, and he has bar ends on it.
Yeah.
And when that rack flexed, it threw his
Well, and that was the thing.
handlebar.
When y'all pulled up, even under braking, it was flopping like that, which leads me to believe it's overloaded. But
I don't think so. I think
unless
there
it
was
had
just play in it, and he said that it always does that. It was nerve-wracking driving that thing, just because every time you look in the rearview mirror, the bikes are doing this. That rack is since gone.
Okay.
And he has, I forgot the name of the company, but it's all vertical.
The vertical ones.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen those.
I like those if you're hauling. I don't see the sense in it if you're only hauling one bike around.
Yeah.
But I also
multi-bike setups.
don't like that for e-bikes either. I can't imagine trying to get an e-bike up there.
No, yeah, it's okay. So some learnings. We're going to go over more learnings on all sorts of different racks. That they all have their limitations, and I know there's people that are just screaming at us. Oh, I've got the best setup in the world, and I don't have to spend $900 or whatever. I'm going to tell you my personal experiences. Your mileage may differ. I've been through them all, and I've screwed them all up at one point or another. But yeah, the e-bike thing, be cognizant of that when you're hauling the bike around is something to be aware of with a 50-pound plus e-bike. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It gets even worse if there's 2 of them on there or 3.
Yeah.
Then you're starting to get into nutso territory. So the rack that I was using that isn't appropriate for this bike was the Kuat Sherpa, which I'm a fan of. The bike has probably just accelerated wear on all the bolts and everything that's torqued together and starting to wobble and loosen. And that's the thing. When you start seeing play, like you're talking about the flex on Garrett's.
Yeah.
When you're starting to see wobble and play, now that's the point to really start checking on stuff. It should be solid back there. And when there's play of any kind,
it still says, even the Sherpa 2.0 says 40 pounds per tray.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I had.
Yeah.
It's 80 pounds gross, 40 pounds per tray. When I looked it up a year ago, I think I only saw the gross weight. I didn't see the tray weight.
They have it now. When you look at it, all it says is 40 pounds per tray.
Probably because there's been other people like me that saw the gross weight.
And much like I said earlier, like I think a lot of people upgrade their bike and their rack gets neglected. And so I think a lot of people are probably in that territory where they went to an e-bike and have neglected their bike rack.
And that's why we're talking.
Yeah.
And not just
Sorry, I'm slow to the party.
Not just for e-bikes though.
Yeah.
Because it's pertinent for everything. And the reality is even mountain bikes these days. We started using hitch racks when 20-pound mountain bikes weren't uncommon. 25 was on the heavy side of things.
Yeah.
And now a 30-pound bike is considered light, even on a mountain bike. So I think there's probably, and if people are throwing all their gear on there too and loading it up, water and everything else, who knows how much weight you're carrying back there.
Yeah. But even the Piston Pro, which is their top, that's not their top end, but it's the Piston Pro and then the Piston Pro X or whatever. And the only difference in that is the lights. Their description, it says 67 pounds per tray with 2-inch 2-bike, 60 pounds for 1.25 inch. But then right next to that, it says 42 pounds per tray on chassis mount RV hitch.
Yeah.
So I guess that's if you have a bolt-on, like a U-Haul conversion to add a hitch, if it's not a frame.
Perfect segue, Bradford.
Okay.
Hitch racks typically are not RV rated. So if you're throwing a hitch rack on an RV, all of those specs don't apply because you have more pivot and leverage on the RV. So they'll say the static weight of 60 pounds per tray or whatever, but that's estimating on a normal motor vehicle that doesn't have this much up and down.
Yeah.
So then you're starting to get into dynamic. So they're not telling you what the dynamic weight rating is. They're telling you the static weight rating.
Yeah.
When you throw it on the back of an RV, that dynamic range goes up exponentially because there's that much more up and down pivot. So that's...
But 67 pounds seems oddly specific. And I'm also of the thought, Leonard, you're adorable, but you're... Hey, come here. Hey, Get out of there. That was Leonard, not Kevin. 67 pounds sounds oddly specific, but I'm sure they do extensive testing. But that also leads me to believe if it's good for 75, they test it to failure, and failure is probably 20% more than that.
Okay, here's my guess. They tested to 100.
Yeah.
And went 2/3.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, 66.6 and rounded up. Yeah. Okay.
That's just a guess.
That's pretty smart. God, you're smart.
That's just a guess. Yeah, so the Kuat Sherpa failed, but that was my fault.
Yeah.
But I also have a Kuat Envy that Kuat was, and it was the 4-bike setup. They were gracious enough to sponsor the Rat one year that we were doing the supported version. So I needed a 4-bike rack, and they were kind enough to, but that's just been gathering dust for years because
This says 60 pounds on the Envy 2.0.
Yes, and that's 60 pounds per tray on that one. But so I really liked my Sherpa because it's lightweight.
Uh-huh.
And it was easy to move around. And
does the Sherpa have the bike stand on, integrated bike stand?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I think you can still add. We had a Sherpa 1.0 with that, and I used it like once. It got in the way more than anything for my own use, so I've never worried about it since then. The Envy, I now have the Envy on the truck, but here's the problem with the Envy right now. So the Sherpa, it was hard enough to get a 50-pound bike up on the Sherpa. I think the Envy's this much higher. Oh. On my truck, which has a 3-inch lift on it and big tires to begin with.
Yeah.
And I'm an old fat man that's falling apart. Oh my God.
Aren't we all?
I'm getting by with the Envy right now, but I may be in long-term in the market for something else, but I don't know what that might be yet. And it's not going to be another vehicle. I know that. So I actually, the way it sits up high for everything but putting the e-bike on. When I'm putting my other bikes on, I like it a lot. And and the Envy's going to be on the truck full time, basically, except for when I'm pulling the camper now.
Here's the rack you need right here.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. The Piston Ion. Have you seen this?
Those are outside my budget.
But it doesn't even have a price yet.
Well, any of the piston ones are outside my budget.
But this one is designed for e-bike enthusiasts.
Yes.
100 pounds per tray.
Yep.
And it has a aluminum ramp.
Yes.
So you can just roll your bike up onto the rack.
And that seems to be the hack that a lot of e-bikers use. They've used PVC manufactured ramps.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. Because you can do walk mode on the e-bike.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So that might be my solution as well.
Yeah.
So we might be looking at that. But what I do want to touch on, because like I said, I know because Kevin's a cheap bastard at heart. I don't know if you know that or not, Brad.
I'm all too familiar.
I know there's some cheap bastards out there. They're just yelling, you do not need a $700 rack. Okay. So my series of failures, fair to say a lot of people start with those peg racks those trunk racks that you strap to the back of the car and suction cups. And
my favorite was when frame design started to get wonky with dual suspension and stuff, and people would throw odd shaped bikes on those and they would just be sitting all awkward.
Yep. And so mine did that, but I tried that for a while. I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
So I started going another direction fairly early in the process. But one time early in my mountain bike riding career, I was going with a group to Cameron Park, and they came by and picked me up. And I think we were 2 cars, and there were 3 or 4 of us in this gentleman's car. And he had one of those. Actually, I think he had it on a truck, but probably a car.
Was this back in the tubes and ride with beer and ride for beer? And
it was early dog days.
Yeah.
Very early dog days.
Yeah.
And so my bike was on, I was the last one to be picked up, and we were going to hit the interstate and go to Waco from there. So my bike was on the very back, and heading out of the neighborhood, there's some culverts there, and he hit a dip and just slammed my dual suspension mountain bike into the concrete because of the additional wobble and the weight and everything like that. And we get to Cameron Park and my fork's leaking oil. And that's probably not good. Still rode it.
Yeah.
Still rode it. And I took it to the duck the next day and got the fork replaced. But so that was a valuable life lesson there on that one. Tried the roof rack thing.
Yeah, roof racks were all the rage back in the day.
Roof racks were all the rage back in the day.
It was a flex, too, because it was like, I ride bikes. See my roof rack?
Mine wasn't a flex. It was, it accomplished what I needed it to do, I thought. And everybody told me, everybody said, it's not a matter of if, it's when.
As a gentleman that worked in a lot of bike shops, I heard enough failures from drive-thrus and garages and basketball goals.
And ATMs.
Yeah, all of that stuff to be overly wary of that.
Yes, and garages. And the one that got me, not to excuse myself, because ultimately, I mean, I had 3 close calls prior to this.
Yeah.
Where I should have lost bikes. But when I ultimately did, it was just turning into a wide open parking lot, literally to answer my phone, as opposed to grabbing my phone, going down the road sort of thing. And I turn into this parking lot and I hear a crunch. It's, what the hell? They had one of those crossbars across the top to keep tractor trailers from going into the parking lot.
Yeah.
I didn't even think to look for it.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And again, when I say it's not a matter of if, it is when. Everybody that I've known over the years that still had roof racks that said, oh no, I do this tennis ball thing, or I put a sticker on my dashboard when the bike's up there so I don't, or whatever.
Yeah. We all get complacent.
Every single one of them at one point or another has crunched a bike.
And I think that's one of the reasons that roof racks went away. Also, bikes have gotten heavier and e-bikes.
Oh, can you imagine trying to put an e-bike on a roof rack?
Oh, no. Although I did used to carry around my kayak on the roof of Paula's Yukon. That was a pain in the ass.
That's a pain in the ass. There's no doubt about it.
What was even better is I was recovering from my elbow when I was...
Oh, I forgot about that one.
So I had a rig that I had set up so I could load the kayak with one hand onto the roof rack. I had these 2 boards that I would clip on to the back of the rack, and they had rope strung between them. So it was like a ramp, and then I'd put a pad on the top of the truck so I could take the nose of the kayak and set it up there with one hand, get at the back, and I could pick up the kayak and slide it up and then unclip the carabiners off the rack. It worked really well, but it was still a pain in the ass. But
I tried the kayak thing for a while. Back, I think when all of us were trying it, when all the trails were flooded for 2 or 3 years, was part of it. I had my eye on a kayak, or I was on the prowl for a kayak, and my lovely bride, I don't know if it's anniversary or birthday or Father's Day or something, found a screaming deal on a kayak on Craigslist or something. And
kayaks are like bikes, though. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, it was a whitewater kayak.
Yeah. Oh.
That doesn't work real well in Denton Creek. I'm just going out there paddling around in circles. I can't go.
Speaking of which, we rode through the Leela the other day.
The Leela?
The Lake Louisville Education and Learning area. And I had completely forgotten, but they have a Texas paddle trail there, which I've never been through. But it's my understanding that it's like single track for kayak.
Interesting.
You can just paddle and go on a trail and come back.
So when you say you pedaled through it?
Maybe I'm not supposed to tell all those details.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are able to go through. When I've looked at it and it didn't look like it went through, I guess is all I'm getting at. But I don't know that for a fact.
I don't think it's exactly perfectly legal, but...
Perfectly fine. I'm not asking you to...
There's a beautiful gravel road on the other side of the spillway.
It looks like there is, yes.
It's amazing. We actually came in from the backside from Business 121 and then came through.
Okay.
And went by the spillway. And the spillway was
roaring.
Oh, my. It's impressive just to be in the presence of that much hydraulic force. you could almost feel it. It's just this monster being released.
So hypothetically, if someone were to come in from the backside, is there any squeezing through fences or hopping gates, or how does that work?
D, all of the above.
Okay.
Avoiding cameras.
Okay.
All of the above.
Understood. Understood. It looks like a great little ride through there, though.
It is. We used to ride through there all the time, pre-COVID, I think, when they were doing all the construction on the backside, and we would ride through there. We just act like you know what you're doing.
Sure.
And there
just carry your clipboard while you're riding along.
And there used to be just a very simple gate on the other side that was open a lot of the times. That gate has been
complicated,
upgraded and updated, and it has keypads and cameras every direction and all of the above.
Probably just because of you guys specifically, but
maybe, I don't know.
But let's go on to some more rack failures. So the roof racks, I think that's an obvious failure.
So my fourth failure happened back in the 90s. The one I said that wasn't really a failure, so to speak, was a roof rack incident. And it was back in the day, it was standard to take your front wheel off to mount your bike on a roof rack. And you would put a quick release skewer. It had a built-in quick release, and you would just clamp your fork and then strap your rear wheel down into a tray and
put your front wheel on a wheel holder.
Or you'd put it inside the vehicle. And in this particular incident, we were going from Shreveport to Ruston for a race, and the front wheel was on a fork or wheel holder on the roof, and we were doing 75, 80 miles an hour on I-20, and in my buddy's Saab, and he had a sunroof, and so you could get a visual on your bike every once in a while, but that front wheel, which didn't belong to me, belonged to John Cobb, the shop owner, decided it didn't want to be on top of the car anymore at 75 miles an hour, so it flew off of the rack, hit the road at 70 miles an hour or whatever, and bounced like a cartoon, just kept bouncing and rolling and bouncing and rolling. And we were between Shreveport and Ruston, where there's like only an exit every 5 miles or something. So I can't remember how far we had to drive to turn around and loop back and hit the exit before and come back. And we found the wheel. I think we found the wheel and pretty quick. I can't recall all the details. I just remember going, holy shit.
Yep.
And so that was before anybody put keepers on any of those. So that was just a piece of CNC'd aluminum or whatever, and it was just straight up flat bar with a slit in it. So it makes sense that it's going to fail.
Yeah. Even when you crank down the quick release, there's...
Yeah. There was, in retrospect, it's no shit it's going to fail, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a lesson learned, you know.
And this one I don't have any personal experience with, and I'm not judging it positive or negative. I know they're out there.
Judgment incoming.
No, not in the least. Not in the least. What do they call them? Sea suckers or?
Oh, yeah.
The suction cup ones?
Yeah. Always been intriguing. It's a super novel concept.
Yeah. I think what they're meant, generally speaking, for the sports cars where a hitch rack's never going to be appropriate and where there's never going to be enough room in the car to hold the bike. And it's usually you see them on things like Porsches and Audis and things with big sloped roofs.
Yeah.
And so a roof rack doesn't even work, sort of thing. I have no experience with those. I don't know of anyone that's lost a bike on them, but I don't know of very many people that have used them either.
Every time I see one of those, all I think is imminent failure.
I wouldn't have a lot of confidence in it myself, but that's just basically from appearance purposes.
Yeah.
I don't know any different.
They look fancy.
I think they're fancy priced. I could be wrong.
I've never actually looked into them. I've always thought novel concept. To me, it's like something you would see on Shark Tank.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't seen enough of them in use, and I don't know anyone that has one that I'm aware of.
Sea sucker?
I think that's what they were called.
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think there's other suction cup based ones out there now besides it, because that one was like a tripod mount or something like that. I think there's some that are okay. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it was a multi-mount one.
I was looking at the pricing.
Oh,
It's not crazy, but for what it is,
How much is it?
for a one bike rack, it's $299.
Okay, that's not terrible.
Yeah.
That's not terrible. And look, it's an Audi that it's on.
I wonder what they're rated for.
Ooh, that's a darn good question. So what I had touched on was the people that use these, typically they can't do a hitch rack, and the car they have is not going to hold a bike, even if you take the wheel off.
Yeah.
And with disc brakes, that's even more of a pain in the ass than it used to be. But anyway, the inside the car or inside the van or in the back seat of the truck solution, obviously I've tried that over the years. That always ends up turning into an issue somewhere along the way.
Especially if you're hauling shit around.
If you're hauling other shit around or trying to haul people around, or somebody gets hurt and you got to haul a person or whatever
So
else.
I don't think I've ever told you this story. I don't think I've ever told this story like on a big format, but I had a non-bike rack failure on one occasion where I was carrying my bike in the bed of my truck on a regular basis because I was too lazy to put a bike rack on. And is when I was working in Weatherford, and I had gotten up one morning and would frequently go and ride North Shore and then change and go into work. I drove from here to Twin Coves, parked at Twin Coves, rode hot lap west side. I think I just rode the west, maybe. Came back. It's 8 o'clock in the morning or something. I pull up to the passenger side of my truck where all my stuff was in my back seat. Change, drink, fluids, whatever. Put my shoes and helmet and all that stuff in the truck. Get in the truck, drive off. Pull into my shop in Weatherford. Check my rearview mirror, and my bike is not there. And this was when I think my Soulcraft was pretty new. Immediately, heart just drops. I'm an hour from the trail. Twin Coves is not a frequently used trailhead.
Right.
But I have to be at work. I can't turn around and go back. So I immediately get on the phone. I start thinking, who do I know that lives close that could go and check and see if I figure my bike's gone.
Sure.
And so I called Cope and I called Foster, and they were both like, yes, I'll go check on it. I'll go see if it's even there. My other thought was, did I run over my bike? Like, how was I that lackadaisical? And how did I not notice over an hour drive? Because I was always looking in my rearview mirror.
Because you had a gazillion things on your mind.
And I was on the phone, like lining out jobs. And all. Long story short, Foster got there and Cope got there shortly after. They had a big chuckle at my expense, obviously. My bike was there, safe, untouched. And it was the only thing that was hurt was my ego a little bit.
Sure.
Because I was embarrassed, but I was also grateful that I had friends that would go grab my bike and that my bike was still there. And it always made me wonder, I wonder if somebody, can you imagine pulling up and there's just a nice bike laying on the ground and you're like, is this a trap?
Yep.
Or is somebody setting me up or something? But I was super embarrassed. But that was a non-bike rack failure.
And that's a good one too. The truck bed storage system for bicycles is not as bulletproof / idiot proof as many people seem to think it is. Lots of comments on my social medias a while back when I had that Brompton that I was playing with, and I was talking about how it was so great for traveling, and people were like, you got a whole bed in your pickup.
Yeah.
Why do you need a folding bike? I've broken a bike in the bed of a truck. Hey, I'm just going to, being lazy, I'm just going to lay it down sideways in the back of a truck, and I'm going to drive over here 5 minutes away. All it takes is one bump.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a broken brake lever
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
The vast majority of truck bed racks that I've seen are not OSHA approved. They're usually gerrymandered to some extent or other. Somebody used to, what they call it, the Instigator. Somebody used to make a kind of a wheel holding setup. But man, like the bed in my truck's a 5-foot bed. Bikes don't fit in there.
That's true as well.
It's that simple. And then the tailgate pad.
The tailgate pad seems pretty foolproof.
It works well for mountain bikes. It doesn't work real well for gravel bikes and road bikes.
Yeah.
And if you're just a mountain bike guy, the tailgate pad can work, particularly if you have a heavy fork. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
But other bikes don't do really well on the tailgate pad, has been my experience. Anyway.
I don't have any experience with the tailgate pad.
I tried it for a couple of years, and for mountain bikes, it was great. For gravel bikes, it sucked.
I've watched far more reviews for tailgate pads than I've actually seen tailgate pads in person.
Tailgate pads were so big around here a few years ago. I'm seeing less of it now. When the whole Enduro Bra thing kicked in, they were all tailgate pad oriented.
Yeah, I think the whole reason the tailgate pad came to be was just for shuttling. Just if you were doing downhill runs or whatever.
Right. And it's a budget option for somebody that bought their first $3,000 bike, and they don't even want to buy a helmet at that point, but they're going to.
Yeah.
They're not going to shell out $600-800 for a rack. So I'll get my $100 tailgate pad that says Fox on it, and I'm cool.
That being said, back to pricing and stuff.
Okay.
The One Up, which I am a big fan of, I was just trying to do a little comparison here for a very similar rack to the Kuat. The Kuat, not the Piston Pro, but their Piston. Oh yeah, Piston Pro, which is here's their SR hitch rack, which it's still a piston, but it's their tray rack that's similar to a One Up.
Okay.
Is $1,000.
Yes.
The One Up, which doesn't have Kashima coated pistons or whatever, is $600. And it's
for one bike.
For a 2-bike.
Oh,
double 2-bike.
One Up $600 for a 2-bike now?
That's what it says. I selected 2 bikes.
Okay.
And it says $600.
Okay.
But that doesn't make any sense because if I click on single, it says $600.
That's what I'm saying. It used to be $600 for.
Maybe it's just not updating.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, it used to be what, $600 for a single, and then it's a $250 or $300 add-on for the second tray.
But it's 100 pounds per tray.
Okay.
Or that's substantial.
It is. No,
Yeah.
I get that. I don't disagree.
Let's see.
The reality is, if my e-bike was my first bike and I was just now in the market for a hitch rack,
Yeah.
probably One Up would probably be towards the top of the list. And then I can never remember what's the guy. So there's the original One Up guy.
Yeah. And then there's the Arctic guy, like Yeti.
But One Up is the Arctic guy. The original guy.
Oh.
Yeah, the original guy is the small.
Oh, that was Kevin again.
That was me again.
Score one for
the
Kevin.
original One Up guy is the independent guy that has the small sight.
I forgot the name of that.
I can never remember what it is, and he only does them in like batches, and sometimes they're available and sometimes they're not. Christine says they're available again, so I might look at that, but I don't know. Again, I'm not in the market right now. If I was starting from scratch, I might lean a slightly different direction because the lighter weight rack to me makes a big difference in day-to-day usefulness.
I can't think of the name of that.
But I don't know how much those piston racks weigh either, but I'm not personally, $1,000 would probably be above my own personal preference for a price point.
Yeah.
Presently, to throw some more P's in there.
Yeah. I can't say enough good things about One Up, and this is the Shimano SRAM argument almost. Kuat does cool shit. They make great racks, but I've been a One Up fan for years, and they've served me well other than, like I mentioned before.
And that's where I've been with Kuat. It's like I have up to this point where I have new hardware that makes a difference.
Yeah.
The new platform, a new bike. There's been no reason for me to even have a reason to go away from Kuat.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have a reason to go away now, but it does, if I am in the market for another rack somewhere down the road, I will be looking at more options than maybe I would have before. Now, that said, Kuat may come out with a new model next week that's an economy version of their pistons or something. I don't know. Who knows? But I don't necessarily need one right now. But if I didn't need another rack, I would explore all options. I wouldn't just automatically go, I'm just going to get a Kuat.
That's funny. On bicycling.com, I was just looking at, they have an article that came out. I don't know when it came out, but it's best bike racks of 2025.
Okay.
And One Up is number 9 on the list. Interesting.
Who's this from again?
Bicycling.com.
Bicycling. So who's number 1?
I'll give you one guess. Kuat.
Okay.
They're Kuat Piston Pro X.
And what? So we've been going this whole time. We haven't talked about Thule or Yakima or anybody else. That there's nothing against those.
Here's another bike rack brand that I had almost forgot about. You mentioned Thule, Hollywood Racks, which I'm not familiar with, but Ceres.
I had a failure with a Ceres.
Yeah. And then Rocky Mounts is number 6 on their list.
Ahead of what? So why are they so anti One Up?
I don't know.
Oh, so they don't give any commentary on it?
No. Swagman is number 7.
Swagman's ahead of one.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no credibility. Anyway.
Because this is number 8 ahead of One Up.
Okay, so what? These are all affiliate links. So One Up's not giving them a decent affiliate deal is what it boils down to.
I was thinking, but I didn't want to.
I'll say it.
Yeah.
I'll say it because I don't even know what bicycling.com is, quite frankly. Is that?
It's a online publication of the Antiquated magazine.
The bicycling magazine? Yeah. So basically not relevant anymore.
Yeah, they're just trying to stay relevant.
Episode 100 and something that's not brought to you by bicycling.com. But the Ceres rack, that was a user error failure on my end. I was actually a proponent of those back in the day. Going to where I am with the e-bike now. You know what the transition for the Ceres one? Because they used to have that fold-up wheel thing. Do you remember that? They had the plastic tray, and the slider would slide around, clamshell around the wheel.
Yeah.
So where e-bikes are a transition on the hitch racks now, 29ers were a transition then. So I had the Ceres rack, but then I got my big top.
Yeah.
And it was snug. I had to get creative and maybe take a couple pounds of air out of the tire, but I made it work until I was coming back from Bar H one day, going through Rome.
Rip Bar H. And
taking that big turn onto 114 out of Rome at 70 miles an hour, and on all those G-forces, that front wheel just popped right out. Yeti big top. Trying to do a wheelie down the road. So
that'll make your heart sink.
But again, that was user error because it was not rated for 29ers.
And then when fat bikes came out, that became another issue.
Fat bikes were another issue.
Yeah.
And that might be an issue that I'm up against even with my Kuats. I need to check on that with because I have the 2.6 tires.
Yeah.
That might be just outside the range with my El Jefe. Because I thought it was a 2.3 tire on the front and a 2.6 on the back. It was just that skinny rim I had on the front. They were both 2.6s, but it was looking like a 2.3 with that skinny Stans rim on it. And I upgraded to a nice fat fancy rim. And now I have 2.6 all the way around. Looks much beefier and looks much better.
Mo beefy.
But we were also talking about stowing the bikes in vehicles, and that's been problematic. I bent a wheel that way once because the bike fit in the back of the truck just so. I didn't have it just so, and I closed the door and bent the wheel. And then
rotors are a big issue,
and
too.
Rotors, yes.
Yeah.
Bent a bunch of rotors.
Yeah. It's so easy to ding a rotor.
Yep.
And the more you take it on and off the bike and try to put it in tight spots, it's not if, it's when, once again.
The most interesting one I saw was our mutual friend, Sean, had his
McAfee?
Had his bike in the back of his SUV, packed just so, went for his ride, put it back in and closed the hatch on the SUV. And it wasn't just so, and window everywhere, because it was a tight fit and just maybe a touch too tight.
Oh, I want to go back and correct myself.
Okay.
The One Up, it was not changing the price because I didn't select the color. So a 2-tray, you are correct, is $950 now.
Okay.
Okay. I was incorrect because I was like, if it's going to do it for $600, let me just see if I can add it to my cart. It wouldn't let me add it to my cart until I selected the color. When I select the color, it says, $950. But that's for their Super Duty.
So here's my issue with One Up pricing. And I think I've mentioned it before, and I'm not knocking One Up here. I'm really not. But where a Yakima, a Thule, a Kuat, or whoever, their $1,000 rack, that's the retail price for it. That's if you go to your bike shop and buy it. That's if you go to REI and buy it. So there's wholesale to retail and retail to consumer. One Up, that's their direct pricing.
Yeah, they are direct to consumer. You are.
And usually direct pricing, there's a cost benefit to the consumer.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying One Up's greedy. Maybe they are over-engineered that much.
They are. And this is where I'll fanboy for One Up. They're made in the United States. It's all machined. Every part on there is replaceable. You could feasibly buy all the individual parts from One Up and build your own rack if you wanted to. So,
and Kuat's the same way.
Yeah.
And
but are they made in the United States?
I'm pretty sure they are. I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know.
I could be mistaken.
Seems like that would be like on their front page.
I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
I thought they were, but maybe not. Maybe it's one of those assembled in the USA sort of things or something like that. But that said, every part is replaceable, and they are very eager to. I guarantee you, I could call Kuat, and I've done it in the past.
Yeah.
I could call Kuat right now and say, I've got this, I think it's a 7 or 8 year old Sherpa 2, and everything's loose on it, and the ratchet arms aren't staying down, and the ball to clamp down the hitch is wobbling some. And they would send me every piece brand new, no cost. And I would essentially, I did that with my Sherpa 1.0. We upgraded to the 2.0. I was going to sell the 1.0. And so I know I have the lifetime guarantee. And this one ratchet arm is binding. And I tried to take it apart and clean it, and it didn't work. And I called them, and they sent me 2 brand new ratchet assemblies. So
yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about their customer service.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that to diminish One Ups. I agree.
Yeah.
I think they're both fantastic rack options.
I would argue that those are the 2 premier racks.
Yeah. And that's why I'm not talking about Yakima or Thule. I've had Yakima stuff. I've had Thule stuff as well, and it all worked fine.
Yeah.
My Kuat stuff has been beyond those experiences, and everyone I know that's a One Up fanboy like yourself is the same way.
Yeah.
I've always wanted the opportunity to truly check out a One Up, but I've never really had any reason to, because I've been perfectly happy with a Kuat.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're probably getting up against your timeline, aren't we?
Yeah. I'm trying to do too much with my day, like normal. Shop and prep, and then my oldest is out of town. He's in Tennessee, and my youngest and I are going to go see the new Mission Impossible.
Okay.
I'm interested, but he really wants to see it, so we're going to do boys. Man, I know that there are tons of bike rack failure stories, and I'm sure we haven't even touched the surface barely.
The biggest thing I wanted to drive home in this discussion, though, is, like I said, it's the folks out there. And I am going to post the link to that. Was that TikTok or Instagram, or what was it?
It was on Instagram. Yeah.
I'm going to post a link to that video, and I'm going to try to get more detail and figure out exactly which rack it was and things like that.
Yeah.
Here's the main life lesson I want to pass along here. I'm not telling you to go out and buy a One Up. I'm not telling you to go out and buy a Kuat.
I'm telling you to go out and buy One Up.
I'm telling you to buy quality.
Yes.
Don't
neglect your rack.
Don't go cheap on how you haul your bike around.
Yeah.
You are ultimately going to pay more than the difference between the quality rack and your perceived cost savings. You're going to lose a bike, or you're going to tear up a bike a bunch. But anyway, enough of that. Anything else we need to cover before we head out?
I don't think so. We didn't talk about the weather. The weather's amazing.
We did talk about
We
talked about the weather a good bit. If you were to ride your bike in this weather, would you have any special advice for anyone?
Maybe pack a rain jacket, a light rain jacket.
Light rain jacket?
Yeah.
But other than that, just what?
Just ride your bike.